In this video, I discuss identifying social engineering attacks. This video is brought to you by the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Center out of Whatcom Community College. NCyTE Center and this material is based upon work supported by the National Science Foundation. My name is Philip Kreger. I'm a professor of cybersecurity at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. In the previous video, I provided an overview of social engineering. Recall that we defined social engineering as a manipulation technique that exploits human error, that is, behavior, to gain private information, access, or valuables. And we went over a couple of examples of social engineering attacks, but here's one I received after that video. This is supposedly from Experian, which is a credit reporting bureau, and they say your score went down 30 points, reviewed 2 flagged transactions. Now, bad actors want me to click on that link at the bottom of the text, and they're using fear here to motivate me to click on that link. So what are bad actors trying to get from you? Well, bad actors target theft of personally identifying information, that is PII, which can result in identity theft, among other things, but that's really the big one. And identity theft is essentially stealing your personal information to attempt to commit fraud. For example, bad actors can get loans in your name. They can pretend to be you and get your tax refund. There's a lot of things that can be done if a bad actor gains access to your personally identifying information. So now let's look at some of the cyber social engineering attack vectors. Okay, what's an attack vector? Well, attack vector simply means a means by which you can be attacked. And while there's many different attack vectors, we're just going to concentrate on 3 that are cyber-based. The first is email, and email social engineering attacks are called phishing attacks. There's also voicemail. Those are called vishing attacks. And finally, there's text messaging, which are called smishing attacks, for SMS phishing. As we discussed in the previous video, bad actors use psychological principles in order to get you to act. So what are some of these motivating factors that bad actors might use? Well, they can appeal to certain things. For example, greed, free money, free things. Appeals to authority, for example, an email from the U.S. government, or law enforcement, or your boss. Fear, for example, emails from law enforcement, or your boss, or the Internal Revenue Service. On top of those, bad actors will add a sense of urgency that you must complete a transaction in a limited period of time. Or vanity, if somebody who's very attractive sends you a message. And also sympathy. So let's look at some rules and guidelines or red flags on how to identify social engineering attacks. So here's some general hints for identifying these types of attacks. The first is an offer too good to be true. Again, this is appealing to a sense of greed. Someone asking for immediate assistance, that is, there's a sense of urgency and also sympathy combined with that. Or an entity asking you to donate to a charitable cause. Or an entity asking you to verify your information. And finally, responding to a question that you didn't even ask in the first place. So here's some additional general hints for identifying social engineering attacks. Do you know the sender? Look at their email. Look at their phone number. Are they correct? Check the links. Does the link match the sender's domain? For example, if you get an email or text message from apple.com, you can hover your pointer over the link, and I don't know if you can see there, but notice that that link goes to apple.com. Now let's hover over the second link and see what it shows us. I don't know if you can see that, but it says myredflag.com. So the way this link is formatted, it is not obvious that one of these goes to apple.com and the other goes to a domain that is not owned by apple.com. Now let's consider for professional correspondence. Check out the grammar, check out the spelling. Is the grammar and spelling correct? Later on, we'll see some examples of how seemingly professional correspondence is actually a social engineering attack will often fail for their grammar and spelling checks. Also, for professional correspondence, is the entity asking for personally identifying information? So now let's look at some examples and apply what we've just learned to these examples. So here's the first one. So let's apply those guidelines that we just learned. So the first thing is greed. This is the motivating factor. Access your $50 reward from Amazon.com. And notice how the colors and even the fonts look fairly correct. Final notice, there's a sense of urgency here is that I have to click on that link so that I don't lose my reward. Now, if we go up to the top, we see this is from Rachel Price at gameaccount@game.co.uk. I would expect an email from Amazon to come from Amazon.com domain. Clearly, this suggests that this is not from Amazon. This offer is only valid until 11:59 p.m. today. Again, they're striving for a sense of urgency here to get you to click on any of these links. Now recall when I said about hovering over one of the links, because we would assume if we hovered over any of these links that we're going to see that the link actually goes to Amazon.com. But when you hover over the link, here's what you see. Sundayspeed.com. So essentially, none of this has anything to do with Amazon. So the previous examples were phishing examples because they came through email. This is an example of vishing. So this is voicemail. So let's listen to this voicemail that I received.
The number is area code 571-360-3379. I repeat, area code 571-360-3379. Call us back as there is a legal case been filed on your name. Kindly call us back so that we can discuss about your legal case and take care of this matter. If we don't hear from you, then there might be a warrant against you, and you might get arrested.
Okay, so let's analyze this. How are they trying to motivate me to call that number? Well, I would suggest fear. So there's a legal case against me, but there's no specifics about it. And if I don't call, I might be arrested. Again, they're relying on fear. But let's analyze this and to see all the different ways why it's pretty clear that this is social engineering. First of all, I assume that this is a legal case and I can be arrested, that this is from some law enforcement agency. Well, this is not how law enforcement works, and I think most of us know that. Notice how it never references me by name. And the reason is because this call is probably going out to hundreds of thousands or millions of people. That's why it's not referencing my name. Also, there's no specifics about the case. What type of case is it? It also mentions call us back, but never explains who these people are. Who is us? And finally, as you can clearly see, the wording isn't professional. The grammar's off. So clearly this is a social engineering attack. This is the one I just received. So this is apparently a message from Venmo. You have one payment of $850 pending. Collect yours here. This again, they're trying to motivate me through greed. $850 that is coming my way. But let's see why this is clearly a social engineering attack. First of all, this link down here to venbme.com, something from Venmo would be from venmo.com, not this link that I'm not familiar with at all. The second red flag is a big one, and that is I don't even have a Venmo account. And the third is this: if this is coming from a professional organization, the spelling and the capitalization is atrocious. Look at this, the randomly capitalized words that you'll never see on any kind of professional correspondence. And of course, the motivator for me to click on this is going to be free $850. So now let's look at an attack that apparently comes from the United States Postal Service. And so notice that this was sent to my address. Now the first red flag here is even though they've got my address, they clearly have my first name and my last name. This was sent to Dear Customer. Now notice that the reply to is this long email address right here, .it. And so clearly something from the United States Postal Service would come from them, not this address right here. If we look down, your package is waiting for delivery. You must complete the payment of, and this is a very weird formatting right here, 2,99, which is really the way that the European Union formats their numbers, but I guess this is $2.99, and then to pay now. Hover your mouse over the pay now to see if this actually goes to the USPS website. Now the interesting thing is that if you hover over all of these, and I'm not doing it right here, but if you hover over all of these other links that are below, they all actually do go to the USPS website. However, this one, the one that says pay now, this is the one that you would most likely click on, and they want you to click on, did not go to that site. But all you see down here is easily copied and pasted from a valid USPS email into a fraudulent email. Notice that when I hover over one of these links at the bottom, which are valid links, notice where this goes to. This is linked to USPS.com. So while these are valid links, the pay now was not a valid link. All of the social engineering attacks we've seen thus far have been very impersonal. They didn't use my first name, my last name, any personal information about me. And the reason is that these emails are being sent out to hundreds of thousands or millions of potential victims. However, there is one form of phishing attack that is called spear phishing that is much more successful than the random phishing messages that we've seen previously. So a spear phishing attack is a message that appears to be from a source the user trusts, such as a family member, friend, CEO, a boss, that is somebody they know and somebody they trust. So these attacks are successful because of the element of trust and sometimes an appeal to authority, as in the case of a message from a boss or a CEO. And again, these are highly successful. So when it comes to spear phishing attacks, anyone can be fooled. Now let's look and see an example of how I was fooled one time. So this was an email that I received a few years ago. Let's look at this piece by piece. So at the top we see attention required, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University revised business development plan. This is coming from Barbara Hollis at Steele Law Firm at Outlook.com, and notice that it has an attachment. And this is the gist of the letter. Notice that it's coming from our current president, Dr. Barry Butler. It's asking for all employees to read an announcement about our updated business integrity program. The email says we must not take these benefits for granted, as corporate scandals in recent years at Enron, Tyco, and other companies, including some companies in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industries, have eroded the confidence of employees, customers, shareholders, and others. And I would suggest right here, if you're interested, is to pause the video and to read the rest of the email. And then it's signed here by P. Barry Butler, President, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. These are our actual logos that we use at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Now the attachment, which I attempted to download, looked like this. It's a secure online document. It says click here to access via Microsoft PDF Reader. And then I was sent to this site, and it asked me for my email and my password. And by the way, this is all looks like a legitimate site right in here. All the iconography and the wording. Once I included my username and password, it asked me to download the file. I downloaded the file, I clicked on it and opened it. Embry-Riddle Resident Student Association Code of Conduct. This is a document that is publicly available on Embry-Riddle's site. I knew right then that I had been had. So immediately changed my password. And I started reflecting on why this worked for me. And the thing is, it was quite a good piece of spear phishing for a number of reasons. So why did this almost succeed? Essentially what they wanted here was my password, so that either A, they could get in to my Embry-Riddle account, or because a lot of people use the same password for multiple sites, then that would allow the bad actor to use my username and password for other sites. Fortunately, I don't do that. If you want to know how to mitigate these issues of only using 3 or 4 passwords, watch my video on password managers. So the first appeal was authority. It was an attorney. In this instance, they could have authority over us. Plus, it's our president of Embry-Riddle. Fear, possibly. We want to make sure that we do what we need to do for our job, so we keep our jobs. And also professionalism. If somebody asks me to do something for my job, then I'm going to do it and do it to the best of my ability. And I tried to, and I failed. Notice that it targeted Embry-Riddle employees. I was not the only one that received this message. So this was not sent out to everybody. It was sent out to people at Embry-Riddle. And the email mimicked the ERAU emails with the logos and colors and things like that. If you go back and you read the text of that email, you'll see there are a couple of places where it was clear that that text was not written by anyone in our administration. And finally, even with that, the email was fairly professionally written. So we've got one more video to cover, and in that video, I will show you how to protect yourself from these types of attacks, and also how to protect yourself against identity theft. Identity theft is a huge problem in the United States, but there's a very simple way that actually costs you $0 to protect yourself against identity theft. This video was brought to you by the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Center out of Whatcom Community College.